Hello! How are you guys? Good to see you all. This is, we're going to do something on Toc Tien. Is that
Yeah.
her name? I don't know how to say it. It's Vietnamese. But we're here with Scott.
Hello.
And he's going to walk us through what he did on the drums and the bass for this track. It's actually a really cool track.
Indeed.
I don't know if we've done many Fly on the Walls with stuff out of Asia.
No, not really.
It's really cool that we're doing so much stuff out of Asia. So this one, you probably won't understand many of the lyrics. We don't, and we don't even know how to say the song, to be honest. But the song is really, really cool.
There's English.
Yeah, there is some English words throughout. So, but yeah, let's get started. Let's look at some of the drums and the bass.
All right. So first, I guess the big impact comes just listening between the final master and the rough. So I'll play that a little bit, because I didn't do a lot, but what I ended up doing mostly on the buses here made a huge difference. So I'll just play that real quick.
Toctie coming, yeah. Anh cầm tâm thức mà trái tim. Những thứ chỉ có ở trên phim. Anh không thể ngăn bàn tay nối đường cổ như dừng lại. Làm em khóc, that's why. That's why. Anh yêu hay thích chiến công. Ain't nobody cry. Ain't nobody gonna cry. Ain't nobody gonna cry. Ain't nobody gonna.
So obviously, when they sent this, the purpose was to have it hard-hitting and aggressive. And the production was well done from the beginning, but it was just felt really flat and short and unexciting. So I take off all of this. The main thing here that really added a lot was, again, I think I've shown this. I've shown this many times. I'm actually not doing anything on the kick here, really. But saturation are the two huge things that I did on this kick.
Is it just to bring out like some of the mids back in? Because
it's actually the low end.
The low end, okay.
What I did actually was to focus on like below 100 hertz.
Oh, okay.
Because the kick was very pointy to begin with, and I wanted to retain the punch, but it needed some power. Like a lot of stuff that sounds like this, 1788 Res. Even if those songs aren't mixed super well, the thing they always have is like the kick hits you.
Yeah.
And this just didn't do that. So the Lime Pre that I use all the time, both on individual tracks and mastering.
Now, so you end up using saturation versus EQ because oftentimes when you get these tracks in, you're having to create lower harmonics. Yes.
So I'll use either just a regular saturation plugin like this, or Saturn, or the Vertigo VSM Ozone Exciter, or I'll use the BX subsynth.
Oh yeah.
Which I use quite a bit, even with like stem masters. Just it's going beyond what a stem mastering would be. But if you send me a song like this and the kick is missing that low end power, I'm not going to be able to bring it back with just an EQ.
Yeah.
If it doesn't exist, I can't make it happen. So saturation here, this DI really brings a lot of low-end emphasis to things, and it kind of extends the tails of kicks and like snares.
Transient-wise?
Yeah. So it's almost saturation and like you're adding like neutron or something to extend the tail, but it has like a nice analog-y feel. So it's, again, not just extending what's there that might not have the information I need. So it might be hard to hear unless you have a sub or good headphones, but...
Oh yeah, I can hear that.
So that does a little bit of the job right there to begin with. And then this, again, I'm pretty sure I've shown this a million times. The warm tube that I'm using below 85 hertz, basically. And pushing the dynamics to where it's also extending the tail. So saturating this, and then it's going to clip solo. And then pushing the dynamics knob over, it's compressing the signal that I'm blending back in.
Oh, I see.
So again, like the saturation, adding more interest, and then instead of the kick just staying as short as it is, it's extending that subtail. And then same thing without changing the dynamics on the everything above 85 hertz, just saturating that adds a little bit of interest to the click and everything.
And you're not like saturating very hard either, I've noticed. It's
No.
just the tiniest amount just for it to warm up a bit, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it don't need a ton to make a big difference here.
Oh yeah, you can.
So
yeah.
the two of these.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So then once that's in with everything in the song, and then I get down the road with compressing everything and pulling it all together, that kick is already in the place that I want it.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to do that later on with stereo bus stuff. This is just some broad, just need a little more here. Just
A little bit more of the attack.
pretty
frequency, yeah.
simple stuff, yeah. And then bringing that all together, I didn't really do much. I played with the snare here a little bit.
Oh yeah, that really fattens up a bit. Adds a
It's-
bit more sizzle and everything too.
This I'm using the warm tape, but doing the same thing, extending it with the dynamics on here.
Yeah.
And this is actually really good. You can't get super precise with it, but it works really well if you want to blend in kind of like a fatter, longer signal into the rest of the... especially for drums, I do this a lot.
Just give it
you
some
can do
more
it
room.
the other way. If you have a snare that's just kind of flat, you push the dynamics to the left, it emphasizes the attack, makes it shorter, you can blend that in. And it's kind of like a parallel compression thing with like a DBX or 1176 where you can get that snap and push
Yeah.
that back in. I talk about Saturn all the time. I love that plugin.
It really is one of those kind of go-to saturators, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite reverbs. This.
A little bit of reverb. Yeah.
Yeah.
All the Valhalla stuff is really good. So just a little bit of reverb because it was super dry in the mix. So it's nothing special, but...
Yeah.
And what I'm doing with all three of these is basically extending the snare. Because the attack was fine, but it was too short. It would get lost in everything else that was
It's
happening.
kind of dying off in the mix.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm extending... It seems kind of strange to be extending the tail of the snare below 180 hertz for this, but it worked really well because it wasn't covering up the kick, and then the attack in that mid-band.
Well, yeah, because at this BPM, you've got quite a lot of space in
Yeah.
between each hit to be able to... Otherwise, it just sounds kind of flat, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was always kind of boring no matter how hard I made the snare hit. It was just too short, and it was always kind of halting.
Yeah.
So it...
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I know exactly what you mean. It kind of feels like a dead stop every time that the snare would hit.
It just killed the groove. So now all the drums. And then I don't remember if we talked about this with the Say My Name song, but what I've been doing lately on my drum buses for the last probably 5 or 6 months now, it's just kind of been not a constant way of doing things, but like a go-to first effort in trying to make everything cohesive, is using the Culture Vulture and 33609. And that's just kind of like Luke has got his drum bus that he uses here with the same like 3 or 4 pieces of gear. He knows what they do. He knows how to use them. That's always like the idea he goes to. I've kind of been doing that with these two. And then a lot of times I'm not doing it here, but then throwing Diamond in with the preamp on, pushing the top end and the low end.
Just to get some of that hot, really top-end air.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I ended up not doing it with this just because I did it later on the whole song. But the combination of these two with the sub...
What brought you into choosing these two?
I played around with the Black Box, the VSM, even like Saturn and the Ozone Exciter. This just kind of always pushing it between like 3 and 4, blending it 50-60%. Always just felt nice.
Okay.
And I like that it's simple. There's only like 4 knobs to mess with. I can't get too deep in the weeds messing around with
absolutely.
things that don't matter.
You end up in a loop of...
so
yeah.
it just kind of worked, and I went with it. And it's been a theme in my workflow throughout 2019 is not simplifying for the sake of not having choices, but finding what I liked and trying to stick with it so that I can build my sound more based on that as opposed to pulling from a million things all the time.
Yeah, and searching constantly.
Yeah.
I know what you mean.
And I always kind of shied away from bus compression, actually, on drums. Until maybe like 6 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
And then I kind of rediscovered this again. And on the Auto 1 release, I'm not sure exactly what it's doing, but the way it kind of just pulls everything together works so nicely.
So you're using the Neve, like how Luke uses the SSL, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Not a ton of compression. It's almost never above 1.5 to 1, sometimes 2.
Yeah.
But I'm not using it to like squash the drums.
It's just glue it together.
All the drums, and then a lot of times the bass. I'll send the bass through it too.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't want everything to get super smashed. I'm just using it as creating like a natural envelope between things. So when the kick hits, the bass moves a little bit, snare hits, everything moves.
Yeah.
Like what we're doing with the SSL here, and it's enabled me to get more interesting kind of groovy sounds without playing with a bunch of individual things.
Yeah. Okay.
Not like that's any groundbreaking technique, but
it's something.
it didn't click for me after years and years and years. Nothing ever worked the way I wanted it until recently. The combination of these 2 plugins.
Gotcha.
And then I'm just doing some soft clip. Well, I guess it's the 2 to 1, but it's basically like 2 knees of clipping.
Mm-hmm.
And then just pushing a little bit of the top end. But pulling this all together.
Very subtle, but you can hear it. You can hear it kind of, it's just kind of keeping everything together. It's controlling everything.
Yeah. And I like the way it sounds. That's the main thing that I've kind of been fighting with drums for a long time, and it kind of bothered me because I'm a drummer, and like the first thing I always think about in music is the drums.
Yeah.
I never felt comfortable with that. And so that's been kind of a big thing for me recently is finding this. I like this. I always start with that, and then maybe I'll expand from that. But not doing a ton individually on anything. There's a little bit. I'm using this. The sub on that plucky bass was a little bit short, so I'm just filling it out by pushing the sustain.
Yeah.
Using Shaper Box to, in a technical way, get the bass out of the way of the kick.
Mm-hmm.
And then here I have this that is also sidechaining it, but I kind of fine-tuned it to get a feel out of it. So not sidechaining to get out of the way of the kick, just to make it move.
Oh, I see.
So
okay.
two different side chains
so
for two
you
different purposes.
use the shaper box you're using to get it out the way of the kick.
Yeah.
Versus rather than using compression to get it out, away.
Because I wanted the top end, I'm doing faster.
Yeah.
So the top end of the pluck, you hear more. And then below, whatever this cutoff is, 5K basically, it's a little bit longer. But it's removing 100% of it right there. So the kick has full reign of that space.
Yeah.
Which you can't do with a compressor. You're not going to get that sound. So,
but then you use the compressor after to give it the feel it needs.
Yeah.
The pump.
A little bit of pump there,
Yeah.
and then going into this, they're not piling up on each other going into the compressor, which then later on going into my bus compression isn't killing everything. So nothing super groundbreaking on this song, but the combination of all these little things are, in the end, what led from the rough to this. And it's very interesting. The only other thing that made a big difference was, of course, this on the master, adding some grit. But
and this is one of those tracks that needed that as well, I think. Yeah.
And that's like another thing, not overthinking everything. I'm using OTT on this, which I'm sure a lot of people wouldn't admit, but it does a really good job just kind of like squeezing things together, and I'm
Yeah.
not doing a ton.
Well,
It's-
you use it in almost in a parallel sense, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have like compression that I put a lot of time into figuring out exactly like the timing of everything, how I want it to feel, and then I couldn't quite get it as tight as I wanted it, especially like the drums being aggressive and punchy and fat. I couldn't quite get it to where I wanted with the loudness I was looking for. This
Just helped to put it closer to
yeah.
yeah.
It's
Bao nhiêu cô gái được Ain't nobody gonna cry, cry. Ain't nobody gonna cry. That's right, baby, we can cry, cry. Ain't nobody gonna cry. Ain't nobody gonna.
so it's not like it's not transforming the master of this,
It's
but I
just-
added this at the very end. I had everything there, and I was just not quite happy. This was just like that extra 5% of like tight, punchy.
But that's
fullness.
what mastering's all about at the end of the day, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
getting that last tiny bit and squeezing that out. So
Yeah. So this was pretty simple. I actually kind of forgot how few things I had done on this to make that big of a change until I opened that this morning. But I'm really happy with how this turned out.
yeah, it's a great sounding track. It's a lot of control on the low end and everything. It's really punchy and really tight. So
Yeah. And a lot of that comes from the production.
yeah, the
So-
production was good. Yeah, well, the better it is when it comes to you, the easier it is for you to get what you need, right?
Yeah, that's that's the important thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
Don't have to overdo it.
Great. Well, on the next one, we're going to be talking about focusing kind of on the vocals and everything.
Yeah, there's the vocals on this came in pretty good shape, but there's two important things that I did on here that really kind of made it shine through. So
Yeah.
it's cool.
Well, thanks for watching, and we'll get into that right now. Thanks.